Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. I am Jennifer Wilhelm, Manager of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Urban Redevelopment Authority. I want to welcome you all here to the City Stat Room, where we hope to discuss the roadmap for inclusive innovation. We're going to be focusing today on the advancing the business section of the roadmap. But just a little primer on what the roadmap is, in case not all of you know. In 2014, the mayor, through his leadership, held 5 different roundtables around looking at a plan, a strategic plan to move innovation forward. And through those 5 roundtables, we created the roadmap for inclusive innovation, as well as we were also looking at benchmark cities from across the world and initiatives that they were doing, and we incorporated all of that into determining that we have a mission statement. Now, the mission statement, as you see here, is what the whole basis of the roadmap is. We want to move innovation forward in the city, but we want to make sure that no one's being left behind. As part of that effort, we created these 6 areas. These 6 areas are reflective of what came out of those roundtable sessions, as well as the benchmarking that I mentioned. And today we are focusing on the business section. We are going through various roundtables, each one focusing on one of these sections. Some of you may be in more than one of those. So today I would like to challenge you to consider the progress that we've made and help us to decide where we're going. We want to really highlight some of the great things that we have done since 2014. We have 61 partnerships across the city through these action items underneath these 6 areas. We've increased our communication methods. We've engaged new businesses around programs across the city. But we're also looking to see what comes next. We don't want to sit on our laurels. We want to see what are the things that we should be considering, are the new partnerships we should be connecting through this business area specifically today. The goal of the business section in particular is here before you. We want to advance the business sector and strengthen the vitality of the business environment by empowering all entrepreneurs across the city. As you can see, we have had various initiatives, which I'll talk about a few specific ones, but here are some of the metrics over the last couple years as we've been working to advance the original iteration of the roadmap. We now have 5 complete actions, 6 on track, and 9 that are upcoming. The details on these specific actions and their areas are in the handouts you have at your table if you'd like to read into them further. A couple examples of what we've done in the business section. One is that we've launched this PGH Lab program, which Anya will speak about in a minute. And we are happy that after our first go-around, we're now having 2 new partners that we're going to announce. I will let her do that. I won't steal her thunder. We also have the Q program, Connecting Urban Entrepreneurs, a partnership that focuses on minority small business entrepreneurs, getting them online so that they have a broader reach for their products and services. And then we also run several series now of small business fairs across the city in all quadrants. In 2017, we have 7 new small business fairs planned. They break into 2 categories. We have general small business fairs, but we also have a government edition, which is a bit unique in that what it does is it pulls together all the government departments, permitting, licensing, all those things that a business would need to know about, and they're in one room. So if you have a business that has a touch point with a city department, and you can just come and talk to everybody at once. And that's an innovation that we've come to after talking to entrepreneurs. So now I want to talk a little bit about more from the city's perspective and how the city sees their role in innovation entrepreneurship is Councilman Dan Gilman.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. It's great to be here. I will try to keep my remarks relatively brief, mostly because I think 95% of this room has heard me give this similar speech a dozen times. although I don't think anyone heard me last night at the robotics meetup, so if you were there, I apologize because it'll sound very familiar. Pittsburgh is at a crossroads, but an incredible opportunity of a crossroads. When I moved here in 1995, it was the second oldest county in America, behind, I don't know, Miami-Dade or West Palm, one of the Florida counties, I don't remember which one, somewhere my bubby would live. And today, the average age of the city, now I'm comparing city and county, but the average age of the city is 32.8. It is the second fastest population growth of millennials with a college degree in the entire United States. Second fastest population growth of people who use bike as their primary means of work commute. It is a changing city rapidly. And most importantly, is a changing demographic of a city rapidly. Interestingly, our history is obviously one of manufacturing. We had most of the wealth in the United States, not only in the city, but in my city council district in the early 1900s, as we built the world, quite literally built the world, bridges across the globe. And today, we are again going to build the world just in a completely different way, with a new definition of small business, a new definition of manufacturing. But what is the same is the need to support everything from the GED to the PhD. What's the same is to be able to sustain family with wages that can support raising children in a city. What's the same is the quality of life that requires a commitment of capital dollars from the city to protect and defend. But what's different is what is the technology. Many people have said it, and I strongly agree, automation is a much bigger threat to employment in the United States than globalization. But threat is not necessarily a bad thing. You have to see it as the opportunity. We could have fought to keep the elevator operator, or you could have fought to create the parts in an elevator. We can fight to keep the driver, or we can fight to manufacture the parts that go into a robotic vehicle or into any other robotic form. That's the reality of the future. And those jobs can be created in Pittsburgh. They should be created in Pittsburgh. And certainly the recent $250 million announcement and the launch at Almano with robotic manufacturing is a key to that. And the great thing about that is an ability to sustain hundreds, if not thousands, of high-end jobs for people with PhDs and backgrounds in computer science that will rebuild a tax base in the city so we can reinvest in infrastructure, so we can open new schools, so we can go to community schools models, all of these things. At the same time, it will create thousands and thousands of jobs in advanced and additive manufacturing, opportunities with community colleges and high schools to teach 18-year-olds the tools they need to go and get good middle-class jobs with benefits at a young age without taking on college debt. That's the opportunity we face, and there's nowhere in this country better than Pittsburgh poised to do it. But it also takes a redefinition of what entrepreneur is and a redefinition of what innovation is. It is not simply the person in their garage in Squirrel Hill trying to create the next Google. It is also the person, in a garage in Beltshoover thriving to open an auto repair shop, or the person in Shadyside whose dream it is to have their own design company, or the person in Homewood who wants to start their own robotics firm. Everything is entrepreneurship and innovation, and it is the city's job to support it. And one of the greatest things I've seen out of this administration in the last couple of years is the work, and they're in this room, but it's of Tom and Jennifer and their team with Henry Pyatt and Henry's team. Henry, do you get a team? Henry, I wish you had a team. Henry, to really open up doors for small business owners. And it's small business owners across the city. You're starting to see the rebirth of business districts in Allentown. You're starting to see the rebirth of business districts in Homewood and in Brighton Heights. It's an incredible thing to watch that reinvestment. And what government has done and needs to do is facilitate. It's been the partnerships with Bridgeway Capital. It's been the partnerships with CDCs around the city that have provided the opportunity for this new rebirth of small business. My vision of government is we're the battering ram. You have the ideas, you have the innovative spirit. We are the battering ram to break through doors, to provide you the future opportunity with access to capital, the opportunity to network not only across the city but across the nation through partnerships like what we're doing with 1776 to bring in new capital, whether it's small amounts locally or it's national venture capital, to help those dreams come a reality, and to do it with a community spirit. I see Adam sitting here with Figment and the work they've been doing in Homewood. And I was there a couple weeks ago on a Saturday morning. And I'll be honest, I was blown away. I expected to walk into, 25, 50 people having a great conversation about the future of Homewood. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people from around Homewood, from around the entire city. It was all ages, it was all races, it was all genders, it was all ethnic backgrounds, it was all religions coming together to talk about what does community development and support of the innovative spirit look like in Homewood over the next decade. And we need that, and we can have that in every single part of the city. And the last thing I'll touch on very quickly, and you'll notice in your packet, it's one of the areas still where we want to do more work, is support of the Welcome Pittsburgh plan. This city was built on immigrants. This city's future is dependent on our partnership with immigrants and refugees. Pittsburgh is Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. We have the welcoming and inclusive spirit. And more now than any time in history, we need to partner with our neighbors, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of the country of origin, regardless of where they practice their religion or what faith they may or may not have, and realize that that is the entrepreneurial spirit of our country. That is the entrepreneurial spirit of this city. It is what our history is, and it is what our future is. I was proud to sponsor 6 pieces of legislation that passed City Council as part of a welcoming city plan that made it clear very strongly that we are planting our flag and both our feet strongly in the welcoming and inclusive side of this argument. We welcome people, and we recognize the partnership that can be created when all of us work together, rowing in the same direction to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to live that American dream that really was born in Pittsburgh and that will continue to grow in Pittsburgh for decades to come. Thank you guys so much for all your support.
As you may or may not realize, the Roadmap for Inclusive Innovation is a partnership of the Urban Redevelopment Authority and the City of Pittsburgh. But it encompasses a lot of initiatives that we also partner on at a very minute, detailed level. One of those initiatives is PGH Lab, and I'm happy to introduce Anya Allman, who's going to say a little bit more about that one.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anya Aleman, and I'm the Civic Innovation Specialist for the City of Pittsburgh. Last year, I came in as a fellow, and I was asked to manage some projects under the business section of the Roadmap for Inclusive Innovation. What I'm going to talk about today is 2 action items, and we're just going to highlight them, and it's a way to let you know what are some of the things that we have been working on in this section in particular. And one of them is one of the action items under the business sector was to expand local and national fellowship programs to connect businesses and government with universities. And last year, the city hired its first fellow, and which happened to be me as well. And I was tasked with coordinating 3 initiatives under the business section of the roadmap, which were Power Up Pittsburgh, PGH Now, and PGH Lab. I worked on several of these initiatives and also connected with a lot of our partners, and I'm happy to expand on to highlight some of the progress that we have been made through these ones, in particular with PGH Lab. And I also worked, another of my tasks was to work to implement metrics for the overall roadmap for inclusive innovation. And since this is a strategic plan, we also want to be able to come up with measurable outcomes so we can look back and see what else can we do, how else can we innovate, and what are some of the things that we need to be looking at right now moving forward. And that's why we invited you here today to also hear about some feedback, but also new ideas coming up for 2017. So PGH Lab. PGH Lab is a program that invites local startups here in Pittsburgh to come and pilot the products and services for 3 to 4 months here at the city. Before PGH Lab, the city did not have a framework where we could invite local startups to partner with us, collaborate, pilot new technologies that both the city could experiment with, and also provide a platform where local startups can collaborate with the city directly, but also get that real world feedback that they might need in order to gain credibility in the product, and that way work with a real world client. So last year we started off with a small pilot of the PGH Lab program. We received 26 applicants and highly qualified, and it was a very competitive process. We have a review committee that is constituted by a lot of leaders here at the city from different departments and also the URA. And they decided to select 3 companies. These were HyperSense, TransitSource, and Renergy. And we have our website, and our website gets, that's where we communicate and promote the program, and we get to reach back to the community through the website. Last year, after the 3-month pilot program, we had a public event where we invited the community to come and learn about the results that happened after the pilot program was over. And we did this event in partnership with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnerships as well, and we got over 150 people there that came and learned about the different pilot programs, the different projects that the startups were working on, and also learn about other programs like PGH Lab, which is beta work from the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnerships. We also gained national attention due to this innovative program that the city implemented last year. There are only 5 programs in the country that are similar to PGH Lab. So last year during the White House Frontiers Conference, we were featured as one of the programs and ideas that made Pittsburgh an innovative city. And so with that in mind, we decided to provide more opportunities for startups to come and pilot their products and services here at the city. And we wanted to allow more partners as well to collaborate with us, and that way we will provide a bigger pipeline for startups to come and test their products and services. This year, we're happy to partner again with the URA, and we're bringing on board the Housing Authority and PWSA. So applicants can send one common application, and after the application period is over, we will decide where the companies best match according to the products and services, and also the needs of the different partners here, the different authorities and the city. This year we're offering, again, space and co-working spaces, free membership to the Global Incubator 1776, access to municipalities network in order for startups to be able to deploy their software or their service, and direct connection with city affiliates. We also have the PGH Lab program is successful because we match startups with a city staff, which we call a city champion. And this person guides the startup for the pilot program for 3 to 4 months and make sure that their pilot is successful, and make sure that the city is providing the necessary help to make sure that the pilots gain the necessary, make sure that the companies gain the necessary help they need. And yes, with that in mind, if you have any questions, please reach out. We have right now open application period, and we would love to have as many startups as possible. Again, this is a great opportunity for someone who really needs to pilot their product and service at a larger scale, and having the city and the authorities as the main client. It would be a great opportunity to also create a feedback system for the startups. So we will be happy. I will be happy to answer any questions, and please spread the word. Thanks.
So we are moving into the part of the program where we will be doing the facilitation. Each of your tables will have the facilitator that just stood up. Please listen to them, and we really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're going to move on to the wrap-up portion of the event. So here's the thing. I heard a lot of good conversation as I was roaming around, so thank you. I love that everyone was really putting forth their thoughts and opinions on this topic. Now we're going to do a quick wrap-up. Each table is going to do a short report out kind of on the major themes that their group discussed, and so that'll just take a couple minutes. We want to start with Ellen's group. Want to come up here, please, for the sake of the camera, and speak into this, even though it's not amplifying your voice.
Okay, our group discussed, our first one was encouraging the cities to shop local. By that, through processes of projects and developments to work with, instead of buying big companies, buying local, so within the neighborhood, to encourage local purchasing, encourage development, local revitalization. The idea was to start with the city and also the authorities to administrate that, and by doing an audit and a database of those businesses that could supply services or materials to make those things happen. One example was simply just signs, like URA signs or city signs, using local companies to do that. I think that one covers that pretty well.
But we wanted them to assess what that currently is.
Yeah, also assess the current process. Second topic was getting big companies partnering with small businesses. Through that, getting them involved to be more collaborative and partner together through that. Seeing how do we match companies and get them to support the local businesses. One idea was a switch pitch through city advocacy and public relations to just basically get the big companies to be more involved through whether that be sponsorship or within the community and in the neighborhood. Lastly, we have two more. Connecting the city stock of building and housing to incorporate that with people in common industries. So, for example, plumbers or different types of industries like that, using city housing to have space for housing, but also training and networking to create that industry and grow that industry. That could then become other storefronts and brick and mortars in all the different neighborhoods. And lastly, we didn't talk a whole lot about this one, but through immigration,
skill inventory.
Yeah.
Giving a voluntary opportunity to talk about the trades or crafts you have, even if you don't understand.
Yeah. So basically, taking an inventory and understanding the skills that are available and putting those skills to work throughout the neighborhoods. I think that's it.
Thank you. Todd, you're up. Who wants to come? Diamante? Here you go.
All right, so in group number 2, we talked about a few strategies for how to create an inclusive model that is more communicative, that also builds upon the work that Henry has been doing in a lot of our communities in how to increase exposure for diverse businesses. We talked a little bit about the need for women to be supported when it comes to business, making sure that some of the lifestyle businesses that are present in Pittsburgh are not usurped by the new interest in tech. And so how do we sort of marry those two things together so that we don't lose that? So a few of the possible actions, and I'm trying to look here so I can stay on track here. So a few of the possible actions that we talked about were, one, for the city to really commit to creating a communications model that is cohesive and branded and the same, so that when we hear information coming out of the city, we know what it means to our communities and to the work that we do. Because I made a comment about, this Launch Pittsburgh 2.0. I had no idea what it was. Henry had sent me a couple of emails about it, but I didn't really understand that it was something that would apply to entrepreneurs in the Hill District. I thought it was more for somebody at CMU or Pitt, and while it's cool, that isn't really what we need in the Hill, and so I'm not going to pursue that thing, when really it would be a great opportunity for some people in the Hill District to be able to sit with the city and solve some of the city's problems and try out some of the things that they're working on. So just really clear and concise communication about what opportunities mean for the communities that they're being directed toward. We talked a lot about the need for Henry's role to be expanded, and so I'm just kind of championing that because and the point that I made is that, Henry, having him being able to come to your conference room and talk to you about different things going on at the city and how does that map to what you're doing in community, it's made a real difference in the work that I do. So we'd love to see collectively the city make a real commitment to probably turning what he's doing into a department and to get very serious about inclusive entrepreneurship. You need those boots on the ground, not just a Twitter feed, not just social media, not just Facebook, but an actual person that you can have tactile engagement with. And so, there was a little bit of pushback about, hey, we may not be able to start a whole department. So even thinking about how to maybe leverage some of what we're doing in this room today to turn that into an inclusive entrepreneurship council so that we can at least work together more cohesively to build capacity and add to some of that. But I really do advocate for an entrepreneurship department at the city that really focuses on inclusivity and how to make sure that we are all keeping pace and partaking in the future. Thank you.
Okay, our last group, Terry.
I hope I get this right. You're going to have to help me on the library component. Okay. All right. So our group, the first thing we talked about was, well, we called it a publicity campaign, but it's sort of a word-of-mouth referral effort through libraries to reach people who are either not online themselves or may need assistance accessing information that we think, well, that's already online at Launch PGH or something else. But when folks go to their local libraries for information and probably to log on because they may not have access in other ways, that we use the libraries as a way to disseminate more information to those who can't access entrepreneurial tools. Am I getting that right? Yep. Okay. The second is a bit, I think the first group talked about it in one way. This may be a takeoff on what you're thinking around housing, and we looked at startup zones or something like that in a couple of ways. We're thinking about the streets that are adjacent to, either parallel or connectors to large retail areas. I'll take Carson Street or Penn Avenue as an example, or I can think of, Craig Street, whatever. Those expensive retail streets are not typically where startups can afford to be. They need to be nearby so that entrepreneurs and their teams can access the services on those streets. But the secondary streets are also an opportunity to aggregate startup activity, but they are often expensive because when entrepreneurs go in or startups go into a community, like artists and others who are pioneers in communities, or folks who have lived through the shallower times in communities, they're there when rents are inexpensive, but once the community gains popularity, then they get priced out of those, certainly the retail districts. And they don't need to be in the retail districts in many cases anyway. So is there a way to create other secondary zones that work in tandem with the retail long street, Main Street focused areas? But they need other things like access to parking and things actually that residents also compete for. So these are really, there's not an easy answer for what makes an intern able to get to work in a startup that might be near busways or other kinds of transportation, but can we solve some of these through the URA or some other things? And to that, I would put housing for entrepreneurs. Can we create some communal housing pockets? Again, when you're strapped for cash to get your company off the ground, housing is frequently a real stretch. And if you've got several people who are in that same boat, is there a housing stock through the URA or others that can either be located in these zones or nearby that could be a win for everybody? Then we did talk at our table a bit about reentry opportunities for folks who either are in the criminal justice system or post that, and other folks who need to re-enter. They may or may not be starting out as entrepreneurs themselves, but they do have similar kinds of barriers in having the population served by those groups entering the workforce. And I think the point, and our friend has left us, so I hope I'm getting it right, that we think about innovation in a more inclusive way. It's not only about entrepreneurs or startups, but that inclusion, innovative inclusion, thinks about all needs that need to be served, not necessarily only entrepreneurial businesses, and that we look at ways to help folks re-enter the workforce creatively as part of our thinking. Gosh, I hope I got it right.
You did great. Thank you, Terry. Woo! Here you go. So I want to see a raise of hands. Who met someone today in this discussion that they had never met before? That's great, because we're all working in the same ecosystem and we all should know each other. And I hope if nothing else comes out of this, which there will be more out of this, but at least you're now going to see this immediate gratification of meeting new people in your area who you could be collaborating with or sharing information with. Now the next steps is we're going to take all these ideas that you gave us, we're going to distill them down, find out where there were overlap, and we're going to continue the conversation with you. So we do have a website, the Roadmap for Inclusive Innovation. If you just Google it, you'll find that website, and it gives you all the detail on the whole roadmap. But we are going to be refreshing that in the next couple of months as an output of all of these conversations that we're having. We're going to be archiving things we've completed, putting in new things from these discussions that we feel have risen to the top. So I thank you all for your participation, and that concludes our session for today.